All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of our GODSU Tuesday talk. We're going to be interviewing some moguls, Dr. Lester Hicks and Dr. Terrence Chapman, and I'm going to pass it over to my partner, Her Excellency Cairo Eubanks.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the GODSU Tuesday Icon Talk. I'm your host, Her Excellency Cairo Eubanks, and as always, it is my pleasure to be your host for this talk. Now, last week we talked about women of power, or as we say, whoop, there it is. But this week we are focusing on our moguls. Now, who are our moguls? Moguls are men of God unlocking legacy successfully. And we have two phenomenal men on the line, Dr. Terrence Chapman, as well as Dr. Lester Hicks, both from different sectors. However, they are both moguls and exemplify leadership in various ways. So first, we want to go ahead and start with Dr. Terrence Chapman. From soda bottle recycling entrepreneur at the age of 6, to senior executive leader responsible for billions of dollars for the Coca-Cola Company, Terrence Chapman has served in senior executive leadership roles with Johnson & Johnson, Citibank, and Coca-Cola. Terrence is a transformational leader amongst senior executives and CEOs. He's a successful entrepreneur and has served as president and CEO of global nonprofit organizations, raising over $51 million and giving to support Kingdom causes worldwide. He now serves as president and CEO of Victorious Family, which can be found at victoriousfamily.org. In his role, he is leading unprecedented efforts to expand the kingdom through the family by equipping and encouraging parents via workshops, parenting conferences, and coaching. Victorious Family has trained over 100,000 parents worldwide in strategic countries that make over 368 million people. Victorious Family has a rich library of parenting resources, including his new book, Do Your Children Believe?, published by Thomas Nelson. In addition to his professional responsibilities, Chapman is active in his local church and community. He currently serves as an elder role at Perimeter Church located in Duluth, Georgia. He has facilitated a neighborhood congregation group for the past 10 years and served as a discussion and teaching leader for Bible Study Fellowship, BSF. He is a certified chaplain through the GODSU M.O.G.U.L.S programming and received his doctorate from GODSU and Ohio Christian University in philosophy and Christian leadership, respectively. Chapman lives in Georgia with his wife, Wanda, and they have 3 wonderful children. Dr. Chapman, are you on the line with us today?
I am on the line, and it's great to be here. Thank you for that kind introduction. My mom must have been in some good material to you.
Well, you know, when you're doing the work that God has called you to do, we can't help but really share that information. And you've done such an amazing job in your role as a leader, as a CEO, and also as the head of your spiritual foundation within your family. But we're going to touch on that in just a moment. My question for you, you talk a lot about families and the crisis that is currently confronting the families today. What would you say what are those crises that you're talking about? What is the crisis affecting families today?
Yeah, I think we're in a real spiritual battle for the family. It's at an unprecedented level than we've ever seen. Here's some ways to look at that, and these things are happening under our noses, under our watch. 64% of children are walking away from the faith after high school. That number has always been high, but you would find people returning as they mature in age. But we're seeing our children walk away from the faith entirely. In fact, for the first time ever, we see double digit of our population. In fact, 12% of our population are identifying themselves as nuns, meaning they're saying they don't confess to any faith or even atheists or any other faith. And so that's a concern that there's no connection, although they don't realize they're making a connection even by making that declaration. We're seeing fragmented families at an all-time high across all ethnic groups, all races, all genders, like we've never seen before. Single parents in households, and for the first time, over 8% of children being raised with no biological parents in the home. That's unprecedented. The absenteeism of the father, we're seeing that as having a devastating effect. Media pressures, we're seeing all types of barrages and winds blowing through the media, obviously through the internet, which can reach every son and daughter in different ways. And this is all depicted as we see and we've heard through the news over the last few weeks. We're seeing children killing children. We haven't seen this type of crises in some time. Suicide rates at an all-time high. I can go on and on, so I'll stop there. But what I will share with you, Gallup just completed a poll that 72% of people surveyed in that poll said that Christianity is losing its influence on American life, and the American family is in a crisis mode. And so that's where we are. I don't think we need to convince anyone that the family is in crisis. The key is, what are we going to do about it?
I think that's absolutely well said. And it makes me think about within my own family, there are people who look at us and they're very impressed with the way in which we are so unified, and they want to know what our secret is, what's the secret sauce. And it's really being able to be spiritually grounded together and having that foundation, working together, collaborating together. But I wanted to know for you, what is your own testimony? I mean, for you to have this epiphany, you might have had these observations within your family and realizing that maybe a change needed to be had, maybe there needed to be more strengthening within your family foundation in order to help others. So can you please share your testimony with us today?
Yeah, I think many in the leadership position can probably identify with my testimony. I was leading one of the largest beverage companies in the world, the Coca-Cola company. About 2/3 of that, we do about $80 billion a year. So 2/3 of that is quite significant. Had a team that was international and spent a lot of time away from the home, Sunday through Thursday, traveling, building the Coca-Cola enterprise, if you will, in the quick service restaurant segment, which was McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King, Hardee's, etc. And in that time, my wife and I began to look at it. Our children certainly was walking in spiritually. We had our church time and everything else. We were looking good, if you will, as a Christian family. But what was in reality, I was feeling as the spiritual leader in my home. The idea is, how do you be intentional in raising your kids? In our case, in the Lord. And so I had advocated that to my wife in the church, to be quite frank with you. And there's this old paradigm where we have left this spiritual development and formation to the church. And we bring our kids into church, we drop them off, or we drop them to a Sunday school scenario, and we expect the church to raise our kids. But the reality that we need to see, and I want to see in the reality that I was raised in, is that this new paradigm that needs to happen in the home. And so I wanted to be extremely intentional in making sure that my kids were raised up in the spiritual formation in the home. And that was the challenge that I had, is to really prioritize that. And so that epiphany has led me on not only to impact my family and my children, but also millions across the world, and training over thousands and thousands of people worldwide. So it's an impact that's very near and dear and passionate to my heart.
I can understand what you're saying in terms of, I'm sure many people can resonate with this idea of being busy professionals and doing everything you can to be successful, give your children the best opportunities for their schooling, for example, or expose them to other countries and other opportunities. However, you have to make sure that you're not neglecting their spiritual foundation, which is what you realized needed to be strengthened. And so I wanted to know, how did you incorporate some of these habits once you realized that you wanted to really focus more on this foundation? What were some of the habits that you put in on a weekly or maybe monthly basis? And how did you incorporate them to make sure that they stuck?
Yeah, so, one is the biggest, I would say, is love well. Regardless of where you are as a parent, love your children and let them know that there's a foundation of love in the home. Secondly, we put in place, in our case, the study of God's Word. We put in place prayer, and we put in place regular devotionals. In fact, for 23 years, my family has been going through regular devotionals. In fact, we still do it today via conference line now that the kids are out of the home. So not only can you parent while your kids are in the home, but you also continue to parent even once your kids leave the nest. So we've put those disciplines into place. Of course, those are disciplines that we're given in the Bible, to really be quite frank with you, is that we should spend time in prayer, we should spend time in God's Word, and we should spend in worship. And so we do that, but we do bring that home. And how do you incorporate it into your home environment? In the old days, we used to sit around the coffee table or sit around the dining room table and have dinner and so forth, and have discussions and wrestle with some of these issues. Today, with cell phones and so many other iPads and other things, we simply are not having the family conversations that we used to have. And so even in church, we divide our children into youth groups over here and adults over here, and we come home after Sunday and we never discuss what took place in that setting. So we changed all that, increased our communication, began to have regular devotionals, and really began to put the disciplines in place so that we can grow stronger in our spiritual formation.
So what I gathered from you was increasing the communication, keeping those communication lines clear, and also having discussions with your children. It's so interesting because my sister and I, we actually did not get to go to church in person last week, this past Sunday, because she had the flu. And so I was taking care of her. But because I know that having a spiritual foundation is very important within our family, we still watched the live stream version of the church service. And I even asked her challenging questions to make sure that she was paying attention. And when my parents got home, what did they do? They actually were able to hear a report of everything that they had already heard in church. And it made them very happy to know that Sudan was paying attention and Sudan was invested in the information. So that's so wonderful that you do that, and to make sure that you're checking in with your children, make sure that they're understanding what is being shared, and they will give you insight that perhaps will shock you and amaze you, just having a different perspective. So that's so important. That really leads into my next question. I know that you have the book, Do Your Children Believe? I wanted to know, what is your vision for this book? How do you see this book being able to change the lives of families around the world?
Well, the beauty about books is that they can reach places that you may not physically be. And so this gives me an opportunity to really put a pen to paper and share really not only my story, but share the thousands and thousands of people that have gone through this intentional process of developing a spiritual plan for their home. We have ideas in our head, but very few of us, in fact, less than 1% of Christians have a written spiritual plan to implement into the home. In other words, do you have a written vision statement for your family? If you don't have that written vision statement, believe me, someone else will. And so we need to be intentional in raising our kids that way. And in our case, this book gave me the avenue to reach people beyond my reach. and put into words stories, and tell stories about people's lives and stories of impact that has happened through our walk with the Lord. And so it's able to tell those stories, lay out the process of how to build and design a step-by-step how-to plan. But I want to emphasize it's not about the plan. It's not about the intentionality. It's who that plan is centered around and what the purpose of that plan is for. At the end of the day, for us, it's that intimacy that we want to bring with the Lord, that this plan brings us closer to.
The last question I have for you, Dr. Chapman, is how can people find this book, Do Your Children Believe, as well as how can they contact you if they have more information or if they want more information or they're interested in being able to strengthen their own spiritual foundation within their family?
That's a great question. Before I answer, I just want to give you a quick stat. 98% of pastors believe the spiritual formation of children begin in the home. But 65% of Christian parents or parents feel inadequately prepared to teach their children biblical principles. And so we've got a gap there that has to be closed. And so they can go to doyourchildrenbelieve.com, doyourchildrenbelieve.com, and pick up a copy of the book. I would also hope that they would pick it up for their children as well as their extended family. Because what we're seeing is a great need to begin to have these dialogues. I want people to imagine families who are hurting today that's starting to thrive. I want them to imagine families being a light in the world. I want them to imagine the multiples multiplied and mobilized worldwide. And our mission is to equip and empower these family champions to make mature and thriving, faithful families. So they can pick the book up. They can also find us in social media, quite active. And we also provide digital resources for parents who have an interest. And they can reach me at Terrence@victoriousfamily.org. Terrence@victoriousfamily.org.
Terrence@victoriousfamily.org. And that's Terrence with one R, correct?
That's correct.
Wonderful. We want to make sure that people are able to reach you. So it's Terrence with one R @victoriousfamily.org or doyourchildrenbelieve.com. Now, I have had the pleasure of getting to know Dr. Chapman over the years, and his commitment to the family is it's remarkable. And it's so easy to see his commitment to the family and just making sure that people are aware of their spiritual foundations, because it's so true, Dr. Chapman. Many people do not even realize that this is important. No matter what you believe, you have to have a foundation and a vision in which you're able to commit to, as well as continue your life's journey through. So thank you so much, Dr. Chapman, for sharing what you have today with us. And we really want and encourage everyone to check out Do Your Children Believe so that you can make a difference within your homes today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Well, it's always a pleasure speaking with you, and we look forward to speaking with you again soon. Next, we have Dr. Lester Hicks. Regina Brett, then Vivian Green, stated, "No matter how you feel, get up, show up, and never give up. Life is not about waiting for a storm to pass. It's about learning how to dance in the rain." Lester Brian Hicks joined an eclectic group of athletes recruited from other sports to play for the legendary coach, Jack Lenyon, at Marshall University. Hicks cashed in on his football talent by attracting prominent suitors from the Big 10, Big 12, Pacific 12, Notre Dame, Maryland, Syracuse, and others before and after his stint at Ellsworth Junior College in Iowa Falls, Iowa. Mr. Hicks earned an Associate of Arts degree from Ellsworth Junior College, a Bachelor of Arts, and a Master of Science degree from Marshall University. He made the Dean's List several times at Marshall University and Ellsworth Junior College, where he was listed in Who's Who among students in American Junior College. Mr. Hicks, a recently retired staff safety engineer, was employed with Lockheed Martin Aeronautics Company. His experience at Marshall shortly after an ill-fated plane crash on November 14, 1970, cultivated life lessons that he brought to work each day and in fact drove him to his career choice. We'll be finding out more about that in just a moment. He is active in his community, sharing the benefits of his experience on multiple fronts. He serves as a mentor to troubled youth and teens in Marietta City Schools Performance Learning Center, teaches Sunday school, served on the Cobb Literacy Council to decrease the dropout rate and improve the literacy in his county for several years. He also served on Lockheed Martin's Employee Communication Forum to improve company relations amongst all employees while increasing productivity. Mr. Hicks earned 21 awards from the state of Georgia for his pollution prevention and community service efforts during an 8-year period, 21 awards in 8 years. He received 2 Best Practice Awards for his non-hazardous waste recycling program and 2 additional Best Practice Awards for his machine guarding program from internal and external auditors. He coordinated and implemented recycling programs at his church and Atlanta Metro school systems, reduced non-hazardous waste to landfill by 72% at Lockheed Martin. Mr. Hicks served on the Georgia Recycling Coalition, where he made several contributions to recycling throughout the state of Georgia. He was promoted and appointed as Lockheed Martin's safety coordinator for the North and South campuses, where he decreased the incidence rate and property damage significantly while driving down the workers' compensation costs. Mr. Hicks has been on the front page of the Atlanta Business Chronicle twice and has been featured in national news, television, and advertising publications. He served on speaker panels on environment, safety, and health conferences in Texas, Colorado, and Georgia. Marshall University named Hicks as one of its 125 most impactful Black athletes during the 20th century, including all sports. He received the prestigious Pathfinder Humanitarian Award from Steubenville, Ohio. In addition to that, he was honored with the Community Service and Sports Award from Lockheed Martin. He holds 4 United States patents. Hicks is the author of Against All Odds, 4th Down and Ever, How the 1970 Marshall University Plane Crash Inspired Me. He has shared Marshall University football's program, Ashes to Glory, and his life stories on talk radio throughout the nation. Mr. Hicks' life stories, Finding Purpose Amongst Tragedy, was featured in Lockheed Martin's Employee Spotlight News, and it was one of the most read stories in his company's history. Mr. Hicks also appeared on the company's television news telecast and appeared as a special guest on the business unit vice president's worldwide webcast. He received Marshall University's most coveted Distinguished Alumnus Award for 2016. It is such a pleasure to have you on the line, Dr. Hicks.
Thanks for having me.
The pleasure is literally all ours. Dr. Hicks, when I tell you that you have really been amazing in the world of engineering, safety engineering, as well as within the realm of football, I know that those are 2 of your passions, as well as community engagement and involvement. Can you tell me why November 14th, 1970 changed your life and inspired you?
Yes, I was living in Iowa Falls, Iowa, literally in exile because I wasn't a cowboy in the classroom, so I had to go to junior college route. And there I was sitting with just, I was numb. On that date, I was sitting having dinner, and a newscast came across the screen stating, the Marshall University football team has crashed and killed the entire team. I was devastated and numb because I could have been a part of that team. I wouldn't have been on the plane, but I would have been on the team. During that era of college football, freshmen didn't travel during that era. And I felt for the guys because
those guys was a part of me. And that fateful day changed my life forever. I learned that life is not forever, and we can't take even tomorrow for granted. These 18 to 21-year-old student athletes went off to play a football game in Kinston, North Carolina, kissed their girlfriends goodbye, had the parties planned for getting back, and they never came back. And that point, after hearing of that crash, I thought and processed my life differently. I never leave anything for tomorrow. Everything that can be done today, I do it. I'm not a procrastinator because I might not get the opportunity to complete what has been set before me. And that's, it still resonates a lot within me. And that's what changed my life forever, just knowing that life is not forever and we can't take it for granted because tomorrow is not promised.
I completely agree. I had an experience earlier this year where I lost a loved one, and I realized that you could not just wait until tomorrow to say how you feel. You have to say it then and there. You have to say it in that moment. You cannot just leave the day and have regrets. You have to be able to take action on a daily, even an hourly basis, making sure that you're not wasting time. And that is so true. Thank you so much for sharing that story and how that crash completely changed your life. And I want to take it one step further. How did this crash in 1970 lead to your decision to become one of Lockheed Martin's best safety engineers?
Yes, a late, great Nate Buffett. He was my mentor, fraternity brother, assistant coach. I came to Marshall. I was a financial major, and he kind of led me to believe that maybe my calling would be more of helping people. And after the plane crash had occurred, I was moved by just having so many young men dying. So I decided that my purpose in life would be to help people help themselves and protect people against themselves. One of my best friends died in a steel mill. He had an accident. He was lifting hot molten steel. He inadvertently hit the wrong toggle and dumped all that steel on himself, and he just burned up like a piece of paper. Then my father was working a construction job. At the same time, bricklayers usually throw those 9-inch cinder blocks across the aisles. While my dad was doing so, a piece of the concrete chip broke off and lodged in his eye. And he was taken to the emergency room, and a doctor, ill-advisedly, went in and cut into his eye. And from that point on, my dad couldn't see out that eye, and just seeing my father at the dinner table with his eyes badly mangled like that just didn't sit right with me. So I wanted to start Crusade. Safety was a business that there's no trade secrets. It's not one that is a dog-eat-dog type of profession where you're trying to get ahead, but it's just extending your godly love to people. That's what I like most about it. I worked other disciplines, but I came back to safety because my love for people. And when I went throughout the workforce, I spent 6 hours a day being with the workers. I could have stayed like most of my co-workers in the air-conditioned office, not going out, but I would go out each day and I would try to get into the minds of the employees. And I wanted them to know that I really cared about them. It was more than just a job for me, it was Crusade. And that's what safety did for me. And also it was my outlet because I was going through some difficult times with my wife, her illness, and my illness. And the workplace was my sanctuary. It kept my mind off of things that pertained to myself, and I was more focused on others.
Dr. Hicks, you were able to find your purpose and your why. And I know that your family must be so proud of you to see how you turned several tragedies that affected not just your family and loved ones, but also those who could have been your companions, your best friends. You saw those tragedies, and instead you turned it into a triumph. You said, I'm not going to allow this to happen anymore on my watch. And so you became a safety engineer, but not just a safety engineer, but one of the best safety engineers for Lockheed Martin because of your commitment to actually decreasing the incident rate and making sure that people were as safe as possible. That is incredible. Absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for that, because there's so many people who would just sit down and say, there's nothing I can do, I give up. But you did not do that. You did not do that. So I wanted to ask you, in terms of the book that you wrote, Against All Odds, Fourth Down and Forever, subtitled How the 1970 Marshall University Plane Crash Inspired Me, is such a powerful title. And I wanted to know, why did you write this book? What made you decide to write the book when you did?
Actually, the dying man's request, my mentor, the late Dr. Marvin Mills, who had kicked me out of graduate school for loafing. I was given a full scholarship. Been the first and only person in my college in my family to attend college, and I lost my way. I thought that my football talents would carry me into the NFL, and I didn't need to study. While I was sitting there loafing and stumbling and bumbling through a book report, he stopped me right in the middle of that charade, said, Les, you know you didn't study. He said, you should be ashamed of yourself. You're wasting those folks' money. He said, this classroom is for people that want to learn. If you want to squander your opportunity and be in the way of someone else, just get out of my classroom. Don't come back until you're ready to become a student. Well, fast forward, going backwards, I'd gone to Marshall. And just like on November 14th, there's a memorial ceremony that takes place. And Lockheed Martin, I'd gone and came back, and Lockheed Martin, when I returned, there was life-size posters of our vast facility, hundreds of posters of me, about 6-foot posters everywhere. And I was just overwhelmed. And one of the co-workers came in and said, Les, you've been posterized. I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, go into the plant. You're everywhere. I walk out and I was humbled, just and overwhelmed just to see me everywhere. TV screens and posters. And I told Dr. Mills about this encounter because a lot of the co-workers, colleagues, they were interested in the Wheel Marshall movie. They was intrigued about my life, and they asked for a book. So I went home and talked to my wife, and then I called Dr. Mills, who was 93 at the time, and I told him what had gone on. He said, Les, you've never failed me ever since I kicked you out of my classroom for loafing. He said, you need to let the world know your legacy. He said, the world needs to know how you evolved. He said, I want you to write that book. He said, I want you to promise me that you write that book before I pass. At the time, he was having a bout with cancer, and cancer was chasing me as well. And it was kind of who would live or die first. And I wrote the book in 8 months, nonstop, against barriers where I had a torn deltoid, 2 bones removed from my back, a dislocated kneecap. And I kept writing and writing every day. And the most gratifying thing that ever happened in my life is I wrote it in 8 months. Marshall asked me to come and do a book signing at one of the fountain ceremonies where depressed victims are recognized. And on the way was Lexington, Kentucky. And I stopped off, and Dr. Mills was still alive, and he got my first signed copy. And that was just one of those, it chokes me up just to know that I was able to accomplish that feat, that I was alive and he was alive. And, ironically, he lived 5 years beyond me writing the book. But that was the thing that really moved me most. And I was able to let the world know all the great things my parents did. Raising 18 kids in a 2-room shack with no running water, no gas, no electricity. We were too poor to even have an outhouse. And here I am, on a national stage and being honored. And these are the type of things that I know it's God that had a pull on my life to allow me to accomplish such great things. Because I definitely couldn't have done it without the prayer of the righteous and my parents.
Your story has just moved all of us here. That is such an amazing testament. Imagine if you had waited or you had procrastinated on that book. Would your mentor have gotten that first signed copy? He was able to be there with you. And that is wow. Wow.
In fact, he wrote he helped me write the manuscript, and he lives within me every day.
His legacy lives on, absolutely. Not just through the book that you wrote, but also through the encouragement that he gave you as well to become the leader that you are today. You are so humble, Dr. Hicks. And your story is just a testament to your humility. The last question I have for you, Dr. Hicks, is if you could tell us more about the 4 patents that you had. I'm sure there's so many of us who would love to hear about that.
So the first patent was occurred in Iowa Falls, Iowa. Once again, inventions are made by things that we don't want to do, have to do, or just try to make it easier for ourselves. I did like to stow off the windshields. So I had a very primitive invention where I took a cardboard box, I took plastic wrappings and stapled the plastic onto the cardboard, put my windshield wipers at a 45-degree angle, and then I put that on my windshields, and I had to clean the frost off. Now my invention is more sophisticated because I thought outside the box, where it's a polyester type material. It covers the front of the window, and also I use a suction device it's concave that it covers the back window as well. So now you can keep frost off the front and the back. But my invention is much more different than most because the same material that I use as frost protection, I can put that same shield inside the car, front and back, with the suctions on the back, and now it keeps the car 25 degrees cooler than the invention that's out now. So that's going to save time and energy, and also it prevents fading. It also prevents fading of your fabric inside your car. Then the second invention, we're going to Disney World, and the kids, we want entertainment for them. So at the time, there was those little cases where you put on the back of the seat and you can watch a 4-inch screen. And I thought, this got to be a better way. So I came up with this idea of a cabinet. It fits, it's good for cars that have captain seats, navigators, and alleys. SUVs of that nature, where I set a full screen TV right in the middle in the back of the car, and then I came up with headphones with splitters where everybody in the car could see the TV except for my wife and me. We could have a quiet zone in the front and do what we wanted to do, and then we wouldn't have to hear, "Are we there yet?" from the kids all the way to Atlanta to Orlando. So that worked out. And then the other was a shield, in houses where the older people, we had remember the old plastic that we used to use? Then we had the foam and the nails they would tack outside the windows till the wintertime. So my invention held the same type of concept, but it's a spring-loaded elastic device that goes around the shielding of the windows completely to keep the draft out. And that's for the door as well. There's a shroud at your door to keep the wind from coming in, which saves on your heating bill. and it's very efficient. And then the last has been pretty much well dated was a tire shield. I was cleaning my car one day and I got chemicals on my rims that etched them. So I took a garbage can lid and put that over the rim part while I would spray and apply the chemical, the magic, black magic on the tires. And that prevented one from damaging the tires. And then I got lazy, so I came up with a prop that would top that covering over the wheels so I could be hands-free. But since then, I left the technology has gone ahead of me, and now they got just a wipe-on solution. But those are my 4 inventions.
Dr. Hicks, for those who are interested in getting your book, Against All Odds, Fourth Down and Forever, as well as want more information on your patents, can you please give us some contact information for them to reach you on?
You can reach me at author Lester Brian Hicks.com.
Can you repeat that one more time?
It's also, it's author, AUTHOR, Lester, LESTER, Brian, BRIAN, Hicks, HICKS.com.
Author Lester Brian Hicks.com. And also, where can we find your book, Against All Odds, Fourth Down and Forever?
On this site, also Amazon.com and Barnes and Nobles.
Dr. Hicks, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. We just want to say that we had 2 wonderful moguls on the line from different areas, as I said. You know, Dr. Hicks comes from the background of sports, as well as safety engineering, and also patenting. And then we had Dr. Chapmon, who is all about laying the spiritual foundations for your family, and he comes from the CEO background with Coca-Cola and other executive businesses. But we're going to transition now to our chancellor for our mandatory graduation talk. We just want to thank everyone who listened in. We're going to be transitioning now. Thank you.
Hello, good evening, everyone. You get situated.